the pandemic really opened up that all infrastructure is critical infrastructure, like manufacturing of toilet paper all of a sudden became critical infrastructure. And you would never think of that in the past. Like, that's not power, that's not water, that's not all these transportation or whatever. But the more and more connected we get, the more and more that this stuff has such a outsized impact on the public. I think you're going to continue to see either government step in or shareholders step in. So I think even if you're lucky enough not to have a regulator, like, it's good to lean forward a little bit and start trying to work on this and start trying to secure yourself.
Welcome to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. In each episode, we dive into the world of industrial cybersecurity. Join us as we cover the latest trends, innovations, and practical insights as we talk with leaders and practitioners across the industry. Gear up and let's get into this week's episode.
Hi, my name is Dino Busalachi with Industrial Cyber Insider, and today we have Gary Kneeland from Claroty with us. Welcome, Gary.
Hi, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me, Dino.
Hey, so can you tell our audience what your role is at Claroty today and what it's been over the years? You and I have known each other for several years and have worked together on various things, and we've been on panels and done events. So just kind of let our audience know who Gary is and what he's doing for Claroty, and what is Claroty?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start Claroty's industrial cybersecurity program, right? We're focused on cyber physical systems. So it's really security for your OT, your operational stuff. We do IoT stuff, medical IoT stuff, so for hospitals, commercial buildings, traditional OT, critical infrastructure type things. And we're one of the leaders in this field of the operational cybersecurity. So within Claroty, I've actually been with the company for quite a while, almost 9 years now. So I think I was the second employee outside of our mothership back in Israel. And I've done a lot of things over the years. I was one of our sales engineering folks. And within the past 4 or 5 years, I moved into our product organization. And now I'm one of our principal product managers. So I manage all of our portfolio. I work on all of our product lines, whether it's our SaaS offering like Xdome, or on-prem offering of CTD or continuous threat detection, our secure remote access platform. I kind of work with all of them and do stuff like this. If you're out at Automation Fair, I'll be there, talk to folks, talk to customers, get all that and feed it back into the product organization.
Yep. 9 years working in this particular industry. So what is it that you've really seen transpire over those 9 years as companies have started learning about what these OT cybersecurity tools are capable of doing, and watching their journey from clients you've had to go back that far to new clients that you're picking up today? How has that market unfolded from your perspective?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting just in the past couple of years. So I've been with Claroty for 9 years, but I was actually doing this before that. So I was at Schneider Electric before this, and I was in nuclear power when the cyber regs passed back in 2007. So I've seen a lot, like NERC SIP starting, the NEI 809 stuff with nukes, all the regulation we have now. I think especially in the past 15 years, it really kind of started. I feel like Stuxnet was a big initiating event that got people at least focused on it. But I can tell you recently, it's changed pretty dramatically. Everybody knows about it now. Like when I was starting to do this, it was very much a thing that was driven by regulation. Like you would have some companies that would have more forward-looking folks that would be driving initiatives, but it was usually forced on them by a regulator. I wasn't seeing a lot of it outside of that. Nowadays, you have board mandates. I see more and more frequently that this is folding into the C-suites. Usually you have CISOs or CIOs or even a CEO mandate that they need to go secure these networks, that they need to go do something about their operational networks. And it's really been a tide shift in that. It used to be a bottom-up type thing. If you had some engineers that cared about security, they would try and push some stuff in. And now it's the CEO doesn't want to be the next one that ends up on the front page of the newspapers or whatever, or they saw a competitor get hit, or maybe they had something happen to them. You're seeing more and more events occur, right? We're seeing bigger events occur that impact a lot bigger area. So I think it's just been changing as that's changed. I also think it's going to continue accelerating. Again, from what I've seen, we're seeing more attacks. You're seeing more opportunistic stuff. Things like ransomware and whatnot, it's hitting more and more areas. And we're also seeing regulators respond, right? In the past couple of years, we had the TSA come on for midstream pipelines and ports and stuff like that. I got to believe it's going to continue going in that direction. Like I've seen it shifting over the past couple of years, and I think it's going to continue going in that direction. So unfortunately, it's, I think, like horses out of the barn, it's not coming back.
Yeah, I would agree that the IT, the board mandates have definitely opened up the door for these discussions to be had, right? One of the challenges that we see as a system integrator on the control system side is still the gap sometimes between IT and OT. And it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on how that convergence and collaboration is really going on between IT and OT. Because when I look at a tool like Claroty, a big percentage of it, I would say in the 80%, that data, those insights, is really geared for the OT folks to have to deal with, right? They have to contextualize it and determine what can I do, what can I get away with here as far as patching, making my control system environment more secure. How is IT, in your view, helping facilitate that? Or are they just kind of saying, look, I'm opening up the door, I'm bringing Claroty in, we think it's a valid technology that we need to have, but I really need execution and delivery of what the tool is telling me in my OT space. So what do you see going on in that particular realm?
I think that's something I definitely see. Like certain organizations, he may own it and they'll administer it, but the folks at the site don't agree or don't want to come in and have security doing anything. Or on the flip side, they may just say, we put in the firewall, everything south of that is your responsibility. You guys deal with it. We don't want anything to do with it. I would say in both those scenarios, I don't think it's very good. I think they both have their own problems. Your OT guys, while they do know the plants incredibly well, most organizations have incredibly skilled security professionals that know a lot of this stuff, know how to respond to it, like networking stuff, all those sort of things that your off the street electrical engineer or mechanical engineer probably doesn't know super well, but they know the processes and the things like that, how it impacts at the site. And on the flip side, if your IT org is running it, like they know how to set up one of these things and they know how to do all the administration, but they need the context of what's going on at the site, how work processes work, how we can actually achieve things around operational schedules and how we need to respond. Dino, you know better than most. You can't just go patch all this stuff, right? It's not that simple. You need that context. So what I've seen with, even though we do see that a lot, I feel like more and more now there's a convergence where you have kind of joint teams. That's also what I've seen the most success with. You want to have folks from both your IT side and your OT side working together. Because at the end of the day, like everybody has their own expertise. And to do this, you need both disciplines, right? You're going to have total security things. If you get ransomware in your environment and you're needing to quarantine it or whatever, you want your IT guys to be able to respond to that and drive you in the right direction. If it is a operational thing that's impacting a safety system, like you need your OT guys involved to be able to say, what can we do? Do we need to shut the plant down? Can we do alternate things to keep operations running? So you really do need both to be able to build those together. And again, if one piece of advice for anybody, the sooner you can get those folks in the same room and get them working together. I mean, you mentioned a tool like Claroty, like we give a lot to the OT guys. We also give a lot to the IT guys. Like you want to get them together and make them realize it's not a bad thing that you're having to do security. We're not punishing you by trying to put security in these systems. It can be a good thing for your operational guys and for your security guys. It doesn't have to be a bad word. And both folks can get benefits out of it. As a system engineer, having an auto-updated inventory of everything that's connected to my systems is something that a lot of folks don't have. They're dealing with Excel sheets and things like that. So trying to more of the carrot, less of the stick, I think helps. And trying to bring these teams together early, I think is also a real critical thing.
Well, your point on contextualizing, right? Data without context is just noise. And we're also seeing, to your point about the visibility to get that asset inventory from a cybersecurity insurance perspective, the insurance carriers are starting to request what is that asset inventory and what are the vulnerabilities associated with those assets, right? If you want to continue to get cybersecurity insurance for us, right? Because they're either getting dropped, because we've had clients come to us and says, yeah, we can't get it because we don't have this information, or their premiums are going through the roof, which, to your point, the C-suite's recognizing that. It's like, man, our insurance premiums are doubling and tripling on us, and our coverages are going down. And you're right, the IT-OT convergence piece is key. As you're seeing those relationships getting better, are you starting to see an OT cybersecurity practice within these organizations? One, to start developing it, and how are they finding people to do this? Two, are there a lot of them requiring and leaning on their partners and or managed services to help them initially to manage all this information? Because to me, it's a net new ad when you put a tool like Claroty in and you start seeing things that you've never really seen before in a different light, context to your point. And then we help with that context to provide value and insights to that. Are you seeing practices growing, not only just the ecosystem within the client itself, but the ecosystem that's supplying services and technologies to the manufacturers? Organizations like ours who build machines, build plants, right? Do control system work.
Yeah. So it's definitely something I've seen shift. Again, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was no one even going after managed security services in this space. They wanted the IT stuff. Clearly, that's a well-trodden area, right? There's tons of folks. You can pick your favorite. But now a lot of folks are trying to get into it. A lot of the big consulting firms, a lot of system integrators. We're seeing even the manufacturers, right? Rockwell, they're offering services now for this sort of stuff. So I see that changing a lot just in industry. It's also something that I think is really challenging. Like your first question there on the people, I think that's one of the hardest things, right? Like it is, I've seen it go both directions where you hire a systems guy and try and teach him security, or you hire a security guy and try and teach him OT. The challenge is it takes a lot of lived experience, or at least from what I've seen, it takes a lot of lived experience. Like me, I was never planning on getting into security, was forced into it, kind of got thrown into the deep end and just had to do it. And we had to beat an audit, right? The NRC was coming in. They didn't care how unprepared we were. They're going to shut us down if we're not ready. And so we had to figure it out. And you had to get in there, do it, get your hands dirty and start working with it. And that, I think, is the hardest thing. It's like to be able to get that experience. So that's why I've seen a lot of these. I think there is a limited talent pool of these folks, like the overlap of the security and systems knowledge. So I see a lot of these managed service providers and other organizations like snatching those folks up. And that's why a lot of them have done well or starting to do well, because they're able to field the right type of people. It's another thing where I have seen organizations build these themselves in-house, and it's something I think we'll continue to see more of, but it's also something I just see shift a lot with IT organizations. Are we going to do it in-house, and then someone comes on and decides we're going to move it all off to a consulting firm, and then someone else comes in and says, no, we got to bring it all in-house again. I think you see those same type of things happening here. So broadly, I think that it kind of follows that same type of shift that we've seen in the IT ecosystem over the years, right? Like it's going to get more advanced. It's going to continue to get more advanced. You're going to have more and more people coming on that are doing this. I think it's a very hot focused area right now. So I think it's going to continue expanding, and then we'll see some of these shifts keep on going on.
Yeah. So folks, back to the people, I don't know if you've heard this term peak 65, but you have a very large amount of baby boomers that are getting ready to retire in the millions. And a lot of them are in these manufacturing environments. There's a lot of tribal knowledge getting ready to walk out the door to the tune of, I don't know, however many millions it is between now and 2027, I think is where the biggest number of folks that are leaving. So now you have a younger generation coming in, and working in manufacturing is not something that they've always viewed as being cool, dark, dirty, dangerous. So back to the resource pool, it's getting smaller. The question is how do we start expanding this, which is where I think the industrial world from an OT perspective has to be more involved in this, in my view, right? You got the IT side, to your point, they've been doing cybersecurity for decades, a couple more. And so they're really good with technologies and solutions and resources and budgeting and governance and policy. And now we need to start shifting that into this OT realm and start developing those same types of capabilities. So to the people side, are you seeing an influx of youngsters coming in, as far as programs that people are putting at the university level or training programs at the state level or?
So I've definitely seen it with schools and stuff. I mean, Claroty is engaged with a number of both government entities and like schools that are trying to put in security practices, and they've kind of expanded into this OT space. I think it's a slower time coming, but it's definitely there. It's also something I think that you're going to see as more and more, like on the manufacturing side, the OEMs, newer Rockwell stuff is not the same as Slick 5s and PLC 5s. There's more modern programming stuff. It matches more with what you would do with other systems. Yes, it's highly specialized things still exist, but I think it is going to slowly trend in a more modern direction. I don't know how long that's going to take because the OEMs move pretty slowly, but I think as that happens, you'll see expertise be able to come online more frequently or more quickly than they can in the past. Because I can tell you, like, to your point, I had to learn Fortran in my first job. I was straight out of college and I'm learning Fortran and I had to work on a mainframe system. That still exists out there. I mean, that's all over the place. I think about that as well because these folks leave, you end up relying so much on the vendors at that point, and they're even losing people. You have these systems that have been in for 30, 40, 50 years, and someone's got to know them. I don't have a silver bullet for this one. I think eventually it'll change, and for greenfield stuff, it'll keep getting better. But the brownfield stuff, I think, is going to be a challenge for companies for a long time.
In Claroty, you guys are kind of in a unique position and role, geopolitical, globally. What do you see going on around the globe as far as certain nations doing a better job at providing cybersecurity solutions and technologies in their critical manufacturing, around the world? I mean, how's that global piece shaping up as far as your perspective?
So I've seen a lot of changes recently, like the European Union's doing a bunch of new requirements around NIS2, like changing how critical infrastructure is defined and adding on stuff. In the US, I mentioned early on the TSA coming online to start doing cyber regs, the AES-CFI in Australia. There's a lot of these new regulatory bodies coming in. I think more adoption across a kind of global thing, I think would be better. I mean, we do have some global standards like IEC 62443 that a lot of folks adhere to, but I do see a lot of reinventing the wheel that happens when these new regulators enter the space that I think makes it challenging both for the regulator trying to practice this stuff and then the users trying to perform these controls, figure out how they're going to deal with an audit. I think it definitely changed, but I have seen it change dramatically. I think European Union has been doing good and leaning forward. I think the United States has a lot of good initiatives moving forward on this as well. So they're definitely starting to move in this direction. But I do talk with a lot of folks that aren't in regulated industries today. And I always try and tell them, like, just because you're not today doesn't mean you're not tomorrow. I've heard folks say, like, the pandemic really opened up that all infrastructure is critical infrastructure, like manufacturing of toilet paper all of a sudden became critical infrastructure. And you would never think of that in the past. Like, that's not power, that's not water, that's not all these transportation or whatever. But the more and more connected we get, the more and more that this stuff has such a outsized impact on the public. I think you're going to continue to see either government step in or shareholders step in. So I think even if you're lucky enough not to have a regulator, like, it's good to lean forward a little bit and start trying to work on this and start trying to secure yourself.
Yeah. And because you guys have a global view of what's going on, I mean, your stuff's installed all over the world. Mm-hmm. Are you seeing the attacks in particular regions higher in certain areas compared to others?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting. So we do a conference every year called Nexus. And this year we had the general who is in charge of Ukraine's cyber response came along. And that was incredibly interesting. Like, the attack before the kinetic war started in Ukraine, there was a massive cyber operation that occurred ahead of time. And they had to move all of their infrastructure into the cloud so that they didn't have hard targets that could be hit and take out, their water and their power and all these things. So they had to do this pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. And obviously we've seen in various geo regions, like, more both kinetic warfare starting, but we're seeing cyber attacks as well. I mean, I think you see it very recently with Israel and what's going on with Lebanon and Iran. This nation state type stuff is definitely happening. There's definitely regions that are a little bit heated up. But I can tell you just from what I've seen, like, the same guys, the same access of folks are still out there trying to do this. But even outside the nation state, it's expanded dramatically where a lot of these same nations now have either hackers for hire that can do stuff, or they're targeting these types of systems because they know they can get them to pay out. Particularly, I've seen this a lot in medical. You see a lot of it where they'll hit ransomware at hospital organizations or large HCOs because they know they may have cyber insurance. I've seen it where they actually hack a cyber insurer to figure out who's insured to start targeting them because they know they'll get a payout. So all of it's getting a lot more advanced, even outside of the nation state type stuff. Obviously, we have these conflicts going on, but even outside of that, as it becomes more lucrative and as these dark groups can go after it just to straight up make money, it's more effective. And I think you're going to continue to see that expanding.
So shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that I've witnessed is IT, in a lot of cases, has gone out and bought an IDS package. Whether it's IT or OT, they got an IDS package. Usually something that was born out of the IT realm versus something specific to the OT realm. Are you seeing any shifts in clients that have made a decision to buy a tool and recognize that the tool that they bought initially isn't giving them everything that they need in regards to what's going on in that OT environment? I mean, Claroty is a highly specialized OT industrial detection system that brings a lot of features and functionalities to it, where some of these other tools are a little light. Our organization, as an SI and an OEM, I believe that we should be on the receiving end. If you have a tool that, as work that we're doing inside these manufacturing facilities, there's a lot of insights and beneficial data to help with the projects that we're doing, either helping you expand your visibility in this technology in the machine centers or the plants that we're building for you, and or help us with our startups. And sometimes I don't get that. IT bought the tool, they're doing their thing. OT guys are unaware of a lot of the insights and the data. Have you seen a good way to say, look, because we'll go in with our own tools. They bought tool X, and visibility on the plant's maybe 10 or 15, 20%. We're getting ready to fire up a packaging line to do a startup, and we want to know more about the inside of that plant. So we'll bring in our own stuff and discover and learn.
Well, I was going to say, I think this kind of like lands back on the initial discussion of the IT OT working together, because IT go buy a tool and then how do they even know, right? Like, unless they're talking with the OT guys who actually know what's out there.
Cybersecurity tool when you don't have anything to do with OTs, specifically to run what's going on inside the four walls of the plant. I got to think globally, but you got to act locally. And you got 20 plants, 30 plants in your fleet. No two are the same, right? Especially if they're globally scattered around the planet between culture and behavior and policy. I see it very difficult. Sometimes they start and they just kind of stop.
Yeah. So it definitely resonates with stuff I've seen. Again, it's something where you need to have the right folks involved. And this is where like Claroty really focuses on having a bunch of different tools to tackle different networks. I think one of the biggest challenges when you have IT guys go into these environments is they think, oh, we got a core switch, that's all we need, boom, we're good to go. But these networks are so complex, like especially at some of these large facilities, like you have things nested 15 deep in a building that's 10 miles away, and like you have no it's connected through a microwave line or some T1 or something. Like it just gets
cellular modems. We find those.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not been controlled either. So not only are they big, unwieldy, and complex, but you've had random system engineers throwing stuff on there to get stuff working, right? Like, hey, I can throw this Linksys modem on here and now I can get access to this thing. I see stuff like that all the time just because this has not been controlled. It's traditionally just kind of been Wild Westies. So that's why we really focus on a bunch of different ways to get data, like different ways to tackle these networks so that you can get those, which I think is one of the things that a lot of those other tools miss, right? And that I always talk about, like, you hear everybody talk about visibility, but why do we care so much about it? Because any of your other controls you're doing build out of that. If you don't know what your baseline is, if you don't know what devices you have, you can't go remediate risk. You're not going to be able to do the threat detection that you want to be able to do because you may be missing areas, right? Like stuff that an attacker could utilize. So we really focus on trying to have different ways to tackle it, whether it's classic passive data acquisition or doing things actively, which we've built tons of different models to be able to query PLCs and OT devices safely. Or we have a tool that you can run on like Windows and Linux hosts within the environment to gather data. So a bunch of different tools in the toolbox, but at the end of the day, I mean, what you mentioned, every company is going to have a bunch of sites. They're going to have a bunch of plants that look different. It's usually not a one-size-fits-all type design. And that's where that very beginning point of get the teams involved, have a local site guy that you can work with, that can validate what you're doing, make sure that it makes sense for that site. A lot of those graybeards at the sites can tell you like, oh yeah, there's this secret closet over here.
Guys, over here.
Yeah, exactly. They can tell you that Yeah, we had that secret thing that we installed 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, that you would never, ever know about unless you're talking with those site folks. So it all kind of goes to that collaborative nature of getting these projects to work and to be able to do it effectively.
Well, as we get close to wrapping up here, future. So what do you see coming down the pipe? AI, for example, how you see an AI getting involved. I mean, your tools, machine learning has AI to it, but AI, generally speaking, not only from the bad guy's perspective, but also for those that are defending, how is AI fitting into this discussion with you guys?
I've had a lot of discussions on my biggest fear with AI is like the phishing, because I don't know if you've seen from this podcast, I could probably make a pretty convincing Dino AI out of this thing and try and phish someone in your family. That sort of stuff does scare me quite a bit, but from the attacker side. But I can tell you from our side, it is something that we're looking into. I think one of the unique things is with companies like Claroty existing and some of these big threat research firms coming online, you have access to a lot of data. So I think more of the regional and vertical specific attacks that we may be seeing, being able to try and identify attack campaigns as they're happening and warn other people as it's happening. I think that's a really hard thing to do without AI because you're dealing with a lot of data and it's all real time. You have to be doing it very quickly. So that's one of the interesting things that we've kind of been kicking around. Some of that sort of stuff to be able to do some of these more advanced data analytics. I think also from like a visibility point of view, trying to identify areas where data could be better, automated protocol discovery. There's a lot of devices, a lot of different types of equipment manufacturers, a lot of different protocols, and being able to automate some of the discovery and analysis of some of that is something that I think is kind of an interesting use case. So those are some of the things that I've seen from that front. Another thing that I see just generically in the industry, like I mentioned active before, I think that was pretty cutting edge. Like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, no one was talking active. I think was a pretty bad word. And now I think most folks are open to it, depending on the industry. Some of you listening may be totally against it, but I can tell you when I was a system engineer, I've turned around on it. I believe it's a good thing now.
Crawl, walk, run, right? I mean, This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You need to just start leveraging these technologies because the insights are very valuable for the organization once you did find out what's going on there. Because my experience is folks don't know what they don't know, and what they think is going on in their environment is not quite what they think. There's a lot of weird, whether it's remote access into the environment or just behaviors of people, even if it's just folks that just aren't trying to be malicious, they just make a mistake. So how do you catch those things, whether somebody's making a PLC change or adding an asset or introducing a new protocol or open port into the environment? You got a control system, all of a sudden it's connected up into the internet. And if you don't have the continuous view of it versus a snapshot in time, that's the thing that I see that needs to really change, because some folks just feel comfortable in believing that I'm still an island. Or the machine center, if I need support, I connect it into the wall network that puts me on the plant corporate network for this small amount of work that somebody's going to do for an hour. And the goal and the intent is to unplug that when they're done. Well, sometimes that doesn't happen. And sometimes that link stays out there. And so now you have a path in. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Anaheim in a couple of weeks at Rockwell Automation Fair. And we'll have to go out and have coffee and chat about how things are going in the OT cybersecurity space.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Again, thank you for inviting me. I'll leave the folks out there with just talked a lot about a bunch of different stuff. There are solutions that advanced quite a bit in the interim time. If you are dealing with this, there is help. Solutions like Claroty, folks like Dino and his organization that can help you try and get this moving forward. So
yeah, thanks, Gary. Good seeing you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industrial Cybersecurity Insider. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. And if you found this podcast helpful or have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please leave us a review or let us know. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.